The Wuhan virus or the coronavirus, depending on how racist you are. We'll give you the update on that. We still have threats against GOP congressmen. Why is this still happening? I'll explain. And finally, a coming home video, maybe my favorite one ever. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. The stock market is going downhill. You should definitely check out your 401k today and sell everything you have. No, don't do that. Just calm down. Before we get into everything else, allow me to tell you a piece of advice that will aid you for the rest of your life. Calm down. It'll be fine. Let's say you're one of these people, and I know these people. You wake up every day and you find something else that is the end of the world. And you know who these people are. We all do. You dated one time. Oh, it's the end of the world. I had a bad day at work. It's the end of the world. I got a flat tire. It's the end of the world. We're out of Cheez-Its. It's the end of the... How many things are actually the end of the world? Well, I mean, as far as your own personal life goes, you only get one of those. That's the day you die. It's really not the end of the world. And this ain't the end of the world either. Is the coronavirus or Wuhan virus serious? Yes. It spreads like wildfire, apparently. Countries are already getting a handle on it, though. The deaths we're seeing from it are extremely old people and people with lung conditions, and oftentimes you have to combine both of those things. I'm not saying it's nothing, because it's not nothing. That was a lot of negatives in a sentence. I don't think you're supposed to do that, but it's my show. I can do whatever I want. It's something. It's going to spread. People you know might end up getting it. Most of them are going to live for it. In fact, probably all of them are. This is something that happens throughout the history of mankind. And as far as pandemics go, it's hard to ask for a better one if you have to have one. I mean, we realize Europe lost half its population at one point in time to a plague. These things happen throughout the history of man. We live in the country with the best healthcare system in the world. We have first-class sanitation. We have first-class doctors. We are going to be just fine. Let every other idiot check their phone for their 401k all day long. Honey, we just lost another. You just do this. What have I told you a million times? Do this. See that? See that? Just set it down. Ignore the 401k for a day. Don't be selling anything. If you got an extra loose cash hanging around, maybe go buy a little something on the cheap right now and relax. We're going to get a handle on everything. We're going to have a handle on the coronavirus. Calm down, kick back, enjoy yourself. I'm not telling you not to take basic steps if you need to. You want to stock up on some extra water? Look, I did that. Buy some extra canned goods for may last you a few days if there's a problem at the grocery store. I did that. Do you need to dig your hole in your bunker and sell off everything you own and put up a sign that says trespassers will be shot on sight as you paint your face with camouflage? Probably a little early for that. We're going to be fine. And I wish we had that message coming from Washington, D.C. I have to be honest. That is my frustration right now. And it's actually not just with Democrats. Honestly, a little bit of that has to go on Donald Trump, too. You could say he was being defensive, and he was, but I don't like it that when we have a pandemic, that everybody in Washington can't, just for a day, I'm not some child who has these naive dreams of Washington coming together, but just for one day, I want Donald Trump at the podium. I want Nancy Pelosi over here, Chuck Schumer over here, Mike Pence behind him, Kevin McCarthy over there, and everybody with one voice standing up there in solidarity, telling the American people, we're going to handle it. You're going to be just fine. Do this, this, and this. Don't worry. We've got you covered. That's what the American people need to hear. That's real leadership, not this crap that we see. You remember Nancy Pelosi? Right away when it came out here, this was the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
With Ebola, we did $5 billion. Now they're trying to take the Ebola money and spend it here. So what he's doing is too late, anemic. Hopefully we can make up for the loss of time, but it'll have to have the professionals in place, the resources that are adequate, and not be using scare tactics about people coming back to our country.
That's disgusting. For the Speaker of the House to make that political right away and throw barbs at Trump, that's disgusting. And again, I am not being naive. I realize everything has to be political now, but we can't have anything. We can't have a virus that, I mean, it is killing some people. You can't just take a moment and not be a horrific ghoul. But no, she can't. Chuck Schumer thankfully deleted this because it turned out Donald Trump did the right thing. But this is what Chuck Schumer, minority leader in the Senate, this is what he said, quote, "The premature travel ban to and from China by the current administration is just an excuse to further his ongoing war against immigrants. There must be a check and balance on these restrictions." Yeah, it turned out now they're yelling at him for not putting in the travel ban earlier. Again, that's disgusting. Stand up, shoulder to shoulder with the president. Tell the American people, we've got you. We all remember the lovely Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago, Obama's chief of staff. He just flat out went on TV and just said the quiet part out loud.
This administration right now looks like they couldn't organize a one-car parade. And I think here's what's going to be devastating for Donald Trump. Beyond the fact that this requires science, management, data, and being transparent, which are all his weaknesses, you're going to have a point within about 2 months where you cannot have big events together. If you look at presidential history, Franklin Roosevelt used to drive out in the country to get out. President Bush 41 was on a speedboat. The Bush and Ronald Reagan would obviously go to their ranches. He is not going to be able to have his rallies. And it is going to psychologically, the office is isolating enough, and his inability to get the admiration, the adulation from that crowd is going to psychologically torment him. And his isolation is going to get more intense, and his tweets are going to get more vicious.
Couldn't even hide the look of glee on his face. Did you see him? They're not even going to be able to have his rallies. It's going to hurt his tweets. People, we're dealing with the pandemic. It's not about Trump. It's not about Republicans. We're dealing with the pandemic. This is Paul Krugman, that moron for the New York Times. Quote, "There are now good reasons to believe that the coronavirus will hit America especially hard, even though it originated in China. Why? Because it plays into multiple pre-existing weaknesses. First, we have a man-child as president. Not only does he judge everything solely in terms of whether it makes him look good, he has a very short-term focus. Downplay the threat to win today's news cycle. Never mind what might happen down the road." And he goes on, by the way, for 8 more of these, and I'm not even going to read you all of this blather. They're all celebrating. Trump's firing back, which he shouldn't do. Quote, "We have a perfectly coordinated and fine-tuned plan at the White House for our attack on the coronavirus. We moved very early to close the borders to certain areas, which was a godsend. VP is doing a great job. The fake news media is doing everything possible to make us look bad. Sad." Now, what he just said was accurate, but still, probably not the time. Hillary Clinton said this.
People should expect is that everybody from their president on down is focused on one thing, not on name calling and blame placing, but how are we going to make sure that we prevent the spread of this virus in as much as that is possible.
God forgive me, but for the first time in my life, I'm about to tell you something. Hillary Clinton is right. Oh, gosh, I feel gross now. I need a shower. All right. What did I tell you at the beginning of the show? Calm down. Why? Because you can't calm down if you're paying too much attention to the news now. Understand something. Those cable news shows you turn on at night and they're yelling and screaming, they've been yelling and screaming at you for 3 years that we're all going to die. We had World War III with North Korea. We had World War III with Iran. Trump is a Russian agent. Ferguson. It's never real. You're not all going to die. Calm down. Everything's going to be fine. Those talking heads who are telling you to panic all day long and poking you in the ribs, turn off the TV. Start listening to other people. Here's an actual doctor, Dr. Drew. Listen to the man.
A bad flu season is 80,000 dead. We've got about 18,000 dead from influenza this year. We have 100 from corona. Which should you be worried about, influenza or corona? 100 versus 18,000.
Right.
It's not a trick question. And look, everything that's going on with the New York cleaning the subways and everyone using Clorox wipes and get your flu shot, which should be the other message, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. So I have no problem with the behaviors. What I have a problem with is the panic and the fact that businesses are getting destroyed and people's lives are being upended, not by the virus, but by the panic. The panic must stop. And the press, they really somehow need to be held accountable because they are hurting people.
It's always the panic that gets you. So don't do it. Don't fall into that trap. If you find you're listening, watching somebody who causes you to panic, causes you to feel stressed out, change the channel, man. And remember what I told you. Set it down. Coming up next, Stu Burgier with Blaze TV. Hang on. Joining me now, the host of Stu Does America on Blaze TV, Stu Burgier. Stu, did I screw that up? How bad did I screw up your last name? I do it every time we meet.
14%. You screwed that one up, but you're getting closer every time. Burgier.
Burgier. That's pretty much what I said. Look, I went to community college. Okay, I don't know how to say words. All right, that's why they just put me on TV for no reason. All right, coronavirus. Where are we at on this thing? And here's where I'm at. This is the best I can suss out on the whole thing. It spreads rapidly. It is a danger to old people or anybody you know with any kind of a lung condition. And that's pretty much it, right? But I see stock market prices plummeting. I had a friend, I talked about it in the open, canceled his trip to Italy because they're shutting down the historical sites. What is going on with the virus?
Yeah, we had a fabulous cruise planned. We sold this whole cruise ship out, and we were going to go to Italy and Israel and all over the place. Whole thing's canceled. You'd be nuts to get on a cruise ship right now, as the government is telling us. It's really bizarre. I mean, it's one of those things where I think the fear of the actual disease is going to be a lot worse than the actual disease. Where the financial part of this is probably pretty serious, right? We saw a 2,000-point drop in the Dow, and you're seeing all this crazy crap going on. Plus, if you go on a trip, there's a good chance you might get quarantined somewhere and stuck, off-site for months at a time, and nobody wants to deal with that crap. Bottom line, though, when it comes to actually, a sickness, it's like it is similar to the flu if there were no vaccinations. Right, you have a death rate which is probably going to be somewhere between 0.5% or 1%, which is more than the flu. But that's the flu has a 0.1% mortality rate in an environment where half the population gets the vaccination. Once that happens, we'll probably be fine. Until then, panic.
Yeah, I don't understand that. And look, you know what? Count your blessings on getting the cruise canceled. Last time I was on a cruise ship, I actually ended up in the cruise ship hospital, but that is another story for another day. What I don't like about the Wuhan virus, I guess we should start calling it that, mainly because the media said we are not allowed to call it that. What I don't like is, and I don't want this to sound hokey, I still choose to believe in the hokiness of Yay America every once in a while. I mean, I guess it's just because I love the place. And I think it's gross, man. I don't remember this kind of panic when we had an outbreak under Obama. I think this is just anti-Trump panic that I see in the media every day. And honestly, I have no problem with partisan politics. It's a contact sport. But I wish we could have one thing that affects the nation where everybody would stand shoulder to shoulder and say, hey, don't worry, we got this. But immediately they're chucking mud.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not possible anymore for us to just have actual discussions about issues that are important to people. That is off the table. We lost that right a long time ago, apparently. I love the Wuhan virus thing, where now even the name of the city where we discovered it is not appropriate to actually use, despite the fact that even the World Health Organization has been using it. I would like the idea that we could kind of all figure out that infectious disease, viruses, things like this, are one of the very few things that I think government has a role in. Like, I want them involved in almost nothing. But when it comes to controlling infectious disease, this should be something where we can kind of sit back and say, hey, let's not have everybody get sick. Let's try to protect as many lives as we can. Let's not make this into a political issue. But you saw this almost, less than a week after we discovered this thing, they wanted to call it the Trump virus in the New York Times. This is their goal. This is the end game. They do not care where this thing ends up when it comes to the health of people. What they care about is who gets blamed for it, and they've made that very clear.
I'm not under the impression there was ever a moment where everybody just got along and it was lovey-dovey in politics. I mean, it was Jefferson and Adams were accusing each other of pedophilia on the campaign trail at one point in time. I mean, that's politics. Ask Julius Caesar how rough it can get. However, are we more divided now? I don't want to say than ever because we had things like the Civil War, but are we just hopelessly completely separate on this thing now, where if 9/11 happened today and God forbid 2 towers fell again, that the next morning Democrats would be on the House floor blaming Trump for it? Is that where we are permanently?
Yes, I think that is completely true. I mean, 9/11 was an event where it did seem like there people actually came together, but that did not last all that long. You know, as soon as we moved on from a few months after that, people started going to their own sides. I mean, think about this. This could be very easily as deadly as 9/11. It is. We've already seen that many deaths around the world, and it's very possible that that sort of death count could come here from this virus. But it's already moved on. There wasn't even the moment where we all kind of united and said, "Hey, this is something that we should all come together on." It's serious, but it's also pathetic in the way that we all kind of look at this and say, "Here's the time that we're all going to kind of just scream at each other and act as if this is a political issue." You know, they say that Trump put Mike Pence in charge. If Mike Pence blows this, if Trump looks like he's incompetent here, he's going to lose this election. This is something that, if you want to boil it down to politics, it actually is a political issue, and that if he comes off as incompetent, he will lose. If this turns into a big thing and the economy falls apart, it's what a lot of his strength is built on. So we could talk about the politics, but like, instead of that, let's step back and just say, hey, this is a serious issue. Let's try not to, go on the Trump virus kick and deal with it, rather than, the typical way we do this these days. But when it comes to Donald Trump, the media loses all sense. These are people that are probably nice to deal with about any other topic in their private lives, but are miserable and just failures of human beings when it comes to this sort of thing.
When did this happen? When did we get to this point? Because you're right. I mean, you're 100% right. A mass shooting now, God forbid. But every time we see one, before the bodies are cold, while they're still hauling them out of wherever they've been shot, we have media members calling for gun laws and trashing people. I mean, just every horrible example you can think of now becomes a nasty political thing. Is it social media? Is that what did it? Is it Barack Obama? Is it Donald Trump? Why did we get to this? I feel like we went 0 to 90 in like a year.
Yeah, I think social media is part of it, and that stuff can get overblown. I mean, blaming everything on social media, I know, is a little bit of a cliche, but there's a lot of truth to it, I think. The other part about it is I think there's a difference in the way the media is with Donald Trump. They just can't believe it happened. Here are a group of people who look, they hated George W. Bush too. They despised the man. They were going after Mitt Romney for giving illicit haircuts when he was 16 years old and putting a dog on his roof. Like, they would do anything to take down a Republican. The bias has always been there, but there's a difference, I think, here with Donald Trump in that there's an obsession. There's a level of obsession with this man, anything to take this man out. They would do literally anything to get him out of there, and that's why they've gone from scandal to scandal with certainty that this was the one that was really going to take him down. And he's been able to kind of like laugh it off, and his supporters are there saying, like, this is ridiculous. And if something does come, let's say he does botch this. Let's say he does screw something else out. Maybe a real scandal does come out someday. Who the hell is going to believe these people? All they've done is tell us that this guy should be eliminated from his exonerated, taken out of, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, thrown out of the White House immediately from day one. They did a women's march the day after he was inaugurated to say he should be taken out of office. They're not even trying to hide it, Jesse, and it's to their detriment. I mean, if they come up with a good argument one of these days, no one's going to buy it.
Host of Stu Does America on Blaze TV. Highly recommend it. Catch the podcast, by the way. Also, that's why I never miss one, buddy. I love you. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, man. Love you.
Be good. All right. Violence, anger, threats against Republicans. Why is it so common now? Well, it's a little bit what Stu and I just talked about, and it's something else too. I'll tell you in just a second. Let me tell you real quickly about my kids. No, it's not going to be one of those stories. My son got an A in math. Isn't that cool? Nobody cares, buddy. Nobody cares about your kids that way. Nobody does. Nobody loves your kids like you love your kids. However, a couple things about mine. They hold doors open for people. They like quarter pounders with cheese from McDonald's. They have inappropriate senses of humor. And do you know why they do all three of those things, ladies and gentlemen? Me. They like those things because of me. Because as hard as this is for us to accept oftentimes as conservatives or libertarians or whatever it is you call yourself, leadership matters. It sucks. We oftentimes don't want it to matter, but it does matter. The things people in the public eye say and do matters. We all remember years ago those famous Charles Barkley ads where he could, I'm not a role model. And I understand what he was saying, that I shouldn't be as a professional basketball player. But look, the truth is, he was. The truth is, when a high-level senator gets on TV and speaks, people listen. When the President of the United States speaks, people listen. As much as I hate this, when some big-time actor gets up behind a microphone and speaks, people listen. People act on the things that they say. Leadership does matter. And when it comes to these leftist acts of violence and threats of violence, the truth of the matter is this. The left has to own that because it's rampant, ladies and gentlemen. It's everywhere. I mean, you do remember that minor incident that took place in June of 2017? Does this look familiar? By the way, quick side note before I get to my commentary on that. I understand that we live in the day and age where as soon as anything bad happens, people want to pull out their phones and, I got to get this on Instagram. If you're ever in a public setting and somebody is firing off with a high-powered rifle, keep your phone in your pocket and run away. Go seek cover. Put the freaking phone down. As much as I do appreciate that footage, full disclosure, do appreciate the footage. Run away. What are you doing? All right, back to what I was saying. That shooting you heard, that was when Steve Scalise almost got assassinated. He didn't just get assassinated by anybody and for any reason. He got assassinated by a Bernie Sanders supporter who did it for purely political reasons. He went to that baseball field to assassinate multiple GOP congressmen where they were there practicing for their game. That should have been a seminal moment in American politics, especially in this Trump era. That should have been a wake-up call to everybody, media pundits and politicians alike, to say, whoa, okay, clearly we need to take a step back. Clearly, some people on the left are taking this stuff way too seriously. They're going to act violently on some of these things that I'm saying. I need to dial it down a notch. That didn't last for 5 seconds if it happened at all. My problem is they didn't miss a beat. When those shots were fired and Steve Scalise was hauled off in an ambulance, I don't think it was 24 hours before we had people going right back to the same dangerous, Trump's a tyrant, this is the end of the world rhetoric stuff that caused it to begin with. Right up to just recently. That's just Chuck Schumer just a few days ago.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
3 years later, ladies and gentlemen, that took place 3 years after Steve Scalise was shot. Does it look like they've dialed down the rhetoric at all? We recently had a Congresswoman Stefanik out of New York. She had a rot in hell fascist pig note, sorry for the language, that was what was on the note, on her car. Former Virginia Governor Howard Dean said, quote, I don't condone this, but as ye sow, so shall ye reap. There is no excuse for the note writer or for you. You are a shame to your district and to the Democratic United States of America. And ladies and gentlemen, what's really sad about that is about as bad as the condemnations of violence ever get from the left. Well, I mean, I don't condone it. I mean, but look, you shouldn't be a piece of crap. I mean, they shouldn't do it, but I really had it coming. Anyway, sorry. That's what it boils down to every single time. The truth of the matter is this. I don't understand how it's not more apparent to so many. Yes, there are some people on the right who are probably a little bit too bonkers for politics. It is, however, clearly more prevalent on the left given the threats and acts of violence we've seen in just the last 3 years alone. So if you're somebody who leads that movement, how do you not look out and think to yourself, yeah, I probably should dial it down just a little bit, just a scotch. But they don't. They rev it up, and they rev it up, and they rev it up, and they rev it up. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Somebody else is going to get hurt. I just brought up Steve Scalise because it was the biggest glaring example, and it happened so early in Trump's presidency. If I sat here and listed for you all the people who've been assaulted just for wearing a Trump hat in the Trump era, gosh, the show would have to be 6 hours long today. It is a serious problem. And don't write me with these, well, I mean, remember Charlottesville? Charlottesville had nothing to do with the right. There was a bunch of scumbag Nazis protesting against a bunch of scumbag Black Lives Matter people. And some jerk, some scumbag killed some lady. That wasn't Trump. That had nothing to do with politics at all. The left and the right both have a violence problem in the same way that LeBron James and I both play basketball. The left has a serious violence problem. You want to talk about a pandemic? It's not the Wuhan virus we should be worried about. It's these leftists and the leadership that drives them to do what they do. Yes, people make their own decisions, they do. But leadership does matter. In the same way I lead my sons to eat quarter pounders with cheese. All right, you know I love these coming home videos. This might be my favorite one ever. Hang on. Joining me now is the author of License to Lie, attorney for Michael Flynn. And I have to be honest with you, I've interviewed a lot of people since I've been doing this. Probably the smartest person I've ever interviewed in my life. Sydney, would you please explain for people who don't remember, and I realize this is going to sound funny to you because you apparently remember everything, what happened with Michael Flynn initially? Why did he get pulled in? Why did he get charged? What happened there? Give us a quick background on it before we talk about what's going on now.
So he was head of the Defense Intelligence Agency for Obama, wound up being asked to leave that position because he disagreed with the administration's position on ISIS. He knew that that was burgeoning and going to be a serious problem when the administration was saying it was the JV team. He was the one who blew the whistle on the Afghanistan war problems. In fact, if you go to the Washington Post website on the Afghanistan papers, you can read his entire interview there, which was extremely critical of the way the Obama administration was handling all of that and the misinformation they were giving out. And of course, he knew a lot about the Benghazi problem. So he was just full of information of things that were going on wrong in the Obama administration. And the general consensus among those that were committing all those wrongs, like Comey, Brennan, Clapper, et cetera, was that there was no way General Flynn could be director of, or the president's national security advisor for President Trump. So he was targeted early on. In fact, if we go to the timeline, it was in late July that they opened Crossfire Hurricane. By August 10, Flynn's name suddenly appears in the Steele dossier that, of course, has no credibility whatsoever, we know now. And those who read it then would have known that then, too. And then on August, they interviewed Stefan Halper, who was a smear operative for the CIA and FBI overseas. He's at the epicenter of lots of wrongdoings in the Crossfire Hurricane operation. And then August 15, Strzok and Page text each other about the insurance policy they discussed in McCabe's office. Well, they had opened a case on Manafort and Carter Page and Papadopoulos by August 10. They did not open on Flynn until the day after they discussed the insurance policy. So they opened on Flynn on August 16th. And then just from the Inspector General's report in December, we learned that on August 17th, the very next day, they send Special Agent Number 1 into a presidential briefing because Flynn was going to be there, and they sent him in there surreptitiously to assess Flynn in case they needed to interview him later, i.e. if Trump was elected and he was NSA, they were going to send agents to the White House to interview him then. That's exactly what they did on January 24th in the famous ambush interview that Comey bragged about on national television as having he was so clever, he just sent the agents over there to talk to Flynn. They had schemed and planned how to interview him in a way that he would not even know he was the subject of the interview. A high-level group of FBI agents met the day before the interview, and Strzok and McCabe had many meetings on how to plan how and when to interview Flynn, deliberately saying they wanted to keep him unguarded and relaxed and not even realizing he was the subject of the interview. And then they used
Sydney,
that.
hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. Just real briefly, is that legal? How can that possibly be legal to interview somebody and be investigating them and not let them know? Is it legal and I'm just an idiot?
Well, it's not per se illegal. It's absolutely stunning that the FBI would engage in that practice. It's even more stunning that he would be prosecuted on the basis of purported false statements from an interview given under those circumstances, because everybody else gets warned and everybody else gets re-interviewed even if they think they might have made some misstatements the first time. Well, none of those benefits were given to Flynn. And of course, we know now that McCabe, who called him up to kind of set him up for the ambush in the first place, was documented to have committed 3 instances of perjury, giving false statements under oath by the Inspector General and referred for a criminal prosecution. McCabe, of course, had the benefit of counsel. McCabe knew exactly why he was being interviewed on those occasions by FBI agents, and being the deputy director of the FBI, certainly knew what he was in trouble for. He lied to the FBI agents when they interviewed him, so he committed an offense worse than Flynn did. He lied under oath 3 times. He knew what was going on. He had no excuse whatsoever, but they just declined prosecution on Mr. McCabe.
Why did they decline that? And I have to tell you, that is the one that absolutely made my head explode. I don't know whether that's Barr to blame. I don't know who's to blame, but that one absolutely made me livid. What is the stated reason? How can you decline that?
They didn't give a reason. They don't have to give a reason. I'm hoping it's because they have additional issues to address with Mr. McCabe that are even more serious, that they've decided not to prosecute comparatively insignificant false statement cases. But if that is the case, then they should definitely move to dismiss the case against General Flynn in the interest of justice, and or for the government's egregious misconduct going from the initiation of the investigation against him to inserting the agent in the presidential briefing to hiding all that information from us until it came out in the IG report this past December, among numerous other atrocities I've documented extensively with exhibits that are posted on my website at sydneypowell.com.
Where is General Flynn now? Is he rotting in a jail cell? Is he home waiting on something? Where is he physically right now?
He is physically with his family at home, just going about his daily business as best he can with the threats of all this litigation hanging over his head. And thankfully, people have been very generous in contributing to the MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org, because that's how we're working. We're working from contributions from regular American people. We haven't gotten any major donations in any way at all, but the American people have been very generous, and I'd say the average contribution is probably $50. Some people even give up monthly. It's been amazing, and there are millions of people across the country are praying for us every day.
Sidney Powell, attorney for Michael Flynn. Would you mind, before we sign off, give that website for his defense fund one more time, please?
Yes, it's MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org, and it's also linked on my website at SydneyPowell.com.
Much appreciated. Thank you, ma'am, for what you're doing. Go fight for him.
Thank you, Jesse.
All right. We're not done. Hang on. Well, I love these soldiers coming home videos. I love the videos of, some dad showing up at his daughter's recital and she sees him and starts weeping and jumps into his arms and the wife's crying and everybody's happy. I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for them. I love them. You guys all know how sweet I am. And I will tell you, having been on that plane before, that plane that is lifting off from a hostile area and going back to the land of loved ones and Taco Bell, it's a feeling that's difficult to describe. So when this little video showed up of some soldiers coming home to West Virginia, I thought that was pretty cool. Listen. Thank you, John Denver, and thank you guys. Welcome home, boys. That is as good as it gets. I'll see y'all tomorrow.